Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. On the programme this week, a call for independence for the Isle of Man, more restrictions on the display and sale of cigarettes and tobacco, and the possibility of charges for missed GP appointments. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Are the reforms to pensions for government workers approved last week a positive step in addressing the future sustainability of the scheme? Policy and Reform Minister John Shimmin says the government has taken its first steps to solving the problem of its public sector pensions liabilities. In Tynwald last week, the court backed a plan to slow down the rate at which the pension deficit was growing. The plans call for members of the government unified scheme to pay higher contributions for longer to end up with less money. They introduced the concept of a cost envelope, which will see government's share of pension contributions per employee during their working lives reduce from 3/4 to 2/3 of the total, while the employees' contributions will rise to meet the gap. The cost envelope represents the percentage of pay workers will get back in pension benefits when they retire. But Michael MHK Alfred Cannon is one of those unhappy with the motion as written and who put forward an amendment. Is this a positive step in creating sustainability in the years to come? Could the reforms have gone further, or would that have made it impossible to attract new workers or retain current staff? Lovely to hear about my new pension arrangements on the radio rather than getting the information from my employer, says Kit the other. Well, we do our best to bring information to you, yeah. Is this the same Alf Cannon who complained that he needed a pay rise because he in effect had a pay cut when he and his fellow MHKs had just started having to pay contributions to his own pension? Asks Josh. Well, your memory's probably better than mine on that, Josh. I can't remember. I wonder if Eddie Tier will leave a note in September. There's no money left. Well, there is a precedent across the water for that, but I think Eddie Tier's a bit more sensible, and so I very much doubt it. I suppose it would be quite funny in a way. This from William. He says, Stu, we can't do much about public sector pensions now until we have a new administration. Yes-ish. MHK is still only paying 5% of their gold-plated pension. Disgusting. Well, that's one of the things that's going to change. I think it's going to go up to 15%. So, you know, this is one of the changes that we're talking about at the moment. You know, do you think that these are going far enough? What skilled workers in health and education? We don't have any on our island. Give them back what they've put in and no more. Well, it's a point of view. I would suspect that probably the vast majority of us would disagree with you if you don't believe that we've got skilled workers in health and education. And we're joined on the line by Jonty, who's got the union's perspective on this. Hello, Jonty.
Yeah, from a trade union council perspective, we've all breathed a huge sigh of relief that these proposals have finally been accepted. It's created a certainty from the uncertainty. We can now carry on with our jobs in frontline public sector service, knowing that we've got a future and that we have pension contributions going into something that will work.
Yes.
That's a major relief. Your contributor via text that said we have no skilled people in the health sector or education sector is treading on stony ground there, I'm afraid, because if he was in A&E having just suffered a heart attack, I can tell you right now some very, very skilled, very good people in there. And the health service people have been really feeling quite down and depressed about the whole pensions uncertainty. And this will give them the lift that they need, because we badly need to support them all. When you need them, you realise how good they are.
Yes.
And we've got an education system which is pretty good as well. Let's face it, we have huge amounts of young people making universities and going on to do good things. So they're the future of this island. So to denigrate them is really it's just pathetically sad, really.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. I assume that the vast majority of our listeners agree with you on that as well. But I mean, looking at the wider issue of the public sector pensions, it's quite unusual, and it's quite reassuring in a way that the unions and the government are pretty much of a mind on this, and are pretty much agreed that this is the way forward, and that it was something that needed to be done. And I'm sure it's caused a lot of pain for both sides, but it's good that there seems to be some sort of a progress on this.
Absolutely. This is groundbreaking, because across the water there's been industrial turmoil over over pensions. What the trade unions have done, through about 10 unions getting around the table with their pensions experts and working with the experts that the Isle of Man government employ, and they are pretty astute people. We've come up with a solution, a proposal that will work. And don't forget, there wasn't a plan B, so we had to do something.
My understanding is that this is all addressed now in fairly broad brushstrokes, and the details to be done by the next administration. Is that a fair reflection on where we're at with it all?
I think the next move is for the Public Sector Pensions Authority to reconvene and put some detail into the proposals via the subgroups and technical advisory groups. Then we could have the scheme members, about 8,000 can have road shows and can then be balloted on the amendments.
Yeah.
So the people that are affected, the 8,000 scheme members, will finally have a chance to have their say. And I think the frustrating part for all of us who contribute to this pension scheme is that it was, before this vote, was out of our hands, and we felt very disenfranchised, is the word I'd use.
Yes.
And of course, 4 members of the House of Keys voted against this, and that's their prerogative, but they must remember that 8,000 scheme members, most of us are electoral roll, and we'll be having our little vote in September, so it'll be real power to the people.
Fingers crossed, yeah. It doesn't sometimes go the way that everybody expects, though. Thank you very much for calling today, Jonty. It's nice to hear from you. And Alan says, I do feel sorry for the kids of today and tomorrow. We and older generations are leaving them in a right mess. Pensions now, the Brexit problem. It appears to me that most of the people who cause these issues are happily unaffected. Stu, in my opinion, very little has changed in regard to the Civil Service Pension Fund. It'll still be heavily subsidised by the private sector. It's about time that government workers acknowledge that they don't have a special status within working society. The private sector have had to accept major changes to both private pension provisions and length of working service. In real terms, we're going to be significantly less well off financially when we eventually retire or die of exhaustion beforehand. Yeah, I think that's my option. Regards from Neil. Again, it's a point of view.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should there be a charge for missing an appointment with a doctor? It's one of a number of ideas being considered by the Department of Health and Social Care. Minister Howard Quayle commented on the idea while appearing before the Social Affair Policy Review Committee this week, alongside Chief Executive Malcolm Couch. Their department accounts for some £250 million gross of the government spend every year. During the session, it was suggested that some form of fine system might be considered. So what do we think about this? Are charges for missed appointments a good idea? Or could the prospect put people off making an appointment in the first place, even if they really do need to see a doctor? Are there other areas where charges should be introduced? Tell us your thoughts on this. Stu, I once missed a hospital appointment because I wasn't told about it, says David H. Oh, well, in that case, they can't blame you for not turning up, David, can they? Charging for missing appointments, great idea, but surely impossible to implement. How will this money be collected without cost to the health service, especially from those with no available funds, says Sue. Good point. In response to Jane, who texted earlier, this must have been after Monday, about waits at the doctors, how would she feel if she or another family member goes to the GP and gets to be seen on time, but due to issues turning out need more time than the appointment slot allows, gets told, sorry, time to make a time for us to go to another appointment? Not too happy, I'd say. Last time I went, I needed advice, got a bit upset. If I'd have been hurried out, it would have been horrible. People are not machines. Things can be simple or unexpectedly complex. I think the doctors really do the best, and it's too easy to forget just how fortunate we are to have the NHS. That from Claire. Some good points there, Claire. Yes, £10 a hit, says Jim. All right, come off the fence, Jim. Tell us what you really think. How would charging patients be managed locally at each GPs or centrally? What overheads would there be? Well, probably more than they'll collect in fines, I would have thought. That's the problem with this. Would it actually end up in profit for each practice? Would it mean employing extra people to oversee the process? Would patients be held to ransom before they could be given another appointment? All good points, and that would be the worry about this. On the face of it, it sounds like a good good, sensible idea, doesn't it? To deter people from making appointments and not keeping them. But it could actually be employing an awful lot of pen pushers. And then what do you do? I mean, if you're charging people a tenner a time, for example, how hard do you chase somebody for a tenner? Because even a reminder letter and you're not making money on the job anymore. Totally agree that people should pay for missing GP appointments within reason. I think some people are much too casual about the whole thing, so maybe financial loss would focus their mind a bit, says Sue. Stu, Howard Quayle is wrong in implying dentists can charge. NHS regulations do not allow dentists to charge for NHS appointments. Oh, right, OK. Private is just that, and it's a totally different basis, completely separate from the health authority and the NHS. Most dental appointments for dentistry are NHS. That's from Rob. OK, well, I'll take your word for it, Rob. I don't know. All that I know is what people tell me. And people sometimes mislead me. I also believe it would take a change in the law and NHS regulations to charge patients for missing doctor or dentist or at the hospital. I agree with the concept, but there's always the question over who pays. Many patients don't actually pay for the treatment. How do you enforce the charge if they can't afford it? Asks Rob. Stu, I agree. Charging people who don't go to the doctor's appointments is a good idea. I don't see how the surgeries are affected by no-shows, though. No, I don't fully get that. After the first hour of appointments, they're always behind time. Often, if you've got first appointment of the day, they're running late. And as the day goes on, the waiting list gets longer. It's then the waiting gets longer. It then isn't an issue when a 1 o'clock appointment doesn't arrive at 1 o'clock, because by the time it's their turn, it's nearer 1:30 or even later, says Ian. That's my experience of it. The only place that is consistently good is the blood clinic. Again, in my experience, and I know that not everybody agrees with it, but I think every appointment I've ever had at the blood clinic, I've been seen within 5 minutes of the appointment time. I think they run a fairly tight ship there. If people can't be bothered to cancel doctor's appointments, how are you going to make them pay, says JC. Oh, go and knock the door down. Send the bailiffs in. Stu, DNA's at hospital. The consultant doesn't know that they're a DNA until the clinic finishes. The patient may turn up late. Appointments can't be brought forward to fill the slot, as the clinic don't know if the next patient or even the one after that will turn up. There are serial DNA people do not arrive or whatever. Why don't all departments send a text message reminder the day before, like the blood clinic? Then if you've forgotten, you can ring and cancel and rearrange. Wouldn't be fair on people with memory problems. Well, Helen, yes and no. I mean, to be honest, if you make an appointment, it really is up to you. They shouldn't have to, treat people like children. I actually quite resent getting text reminders and things and letters. You get an appointment 6 months hence, and then you get one just beforehand, and it's all a bit too much. I think if you make an appointment, surely most of us, and if it's somebody who's got a memory problem, then yeah, maybe. But for the majority of people, I think that'd be a bit more intrusive. Let's go to the lines. We've got Margaret on. Hello, Margaret.
You've just blown everything I was going to say.
Oh, no.
My husband's dentist texts him the day before his appointment is due.
Yeah.
Every time. And it does remind him. It is a good reminder. And I was just going to suggest that maybe if the doctors did something similar.
Right.
Well, obviously, you don't agree with that.
Well, I just think that, more and more these days, we as a population are making things that we should take responsibility for somebody else's problem. It's the government's fault because they don't tell us. No, they've told us. It's just that we've forgotten. I think we need to take more personal responsibility, to be honest.
Well, I agree with you there, definitely. I mean, my dentist doesn't text me and remind me. I put a note on the calendar, and when the calendar goes over, that's it. If it's towards the end of the year, I put it at the end of the calendar and put it on the next one.
Yeah.
But as I say, that's my dentist. Doesn't remind me, but my husband's dentist does. So,
and it works. So, yeah. And
it works.
Yeah, oh, well, that'll do. All right, Margaret, thank you very much.
Okay.
What about charging people? Do you think that's a good idea if people are serial DNAs?
Not everybody can afford it.
No, but even so, there's got to be some sanction against it.
A minimal charge maybe, but I'm not too keen on that because people are paying in their national health when they're working.
There is that.
Anyway.
Yeah, there is that.
They've already paid in, and okay, if they've missed an appointment, then maybe a minimal charge of maybe £5.
Or an escalating charge, so if you do it twice or 3 times, it goes up each time you do it.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. But I'm not really in favour of that, to be honest.
Nope. All right. Well, thank you for calling, Margaret. It's been lovely to hear from you today. If you're told there's a long waiting list to get medical consultation, then you pay the private cost for it, then you're removed from DHSS treatments, and all future medical required will have to be paid for privately. What? Surely not. To charge people is very easy for missing appointments. Deduct money from tax coding, i.e. £300 less for each missed appointment. Ooh, or £10 a week for 30 weeks from benefit or pension at the hospital. An appointment letter clearly states that if you don't attend your appointment and don't ring to cancel, then you'd may be discharged. Do they? Most people have phones and can ring up to change an appointment or let the hospital know that you're too sick to attend. Yes, but the health minister made a very good point in that interview, I thought, which was that, the number of times that I've tried to phone a dentist or a doctor and the phone just rings out and nobody answers it. Now, they would say, that's because we're busy on the other line or whatever. But, when you keep ringing and you keep getting a phone that isn't being answered, you do get very quickly to a point where you think, all right, well, if you can't be bothered answering the phones, then I'm not going to be bothered to keep on ringing in. So, under circumstances like that, if there was a simpler scheme, either a text or an email thing or a dedicated cancellation number that you could phone, then I think that more people maybe would do that. Maybe more people would cancel an appointment rather than just not turn up. Les called, why can't people just ring and cancel the appointment? What's so difficult about that? Well, as I just said, sometimes you phone up and the phone just rings and rings and rings, and you do get fed up with it after a while, and you think, well, if they can't be bothered answering the phone, I'm not going to be bothered turning up. Great idea. The public could charge Nobles for cancelled ops due to surgeons' holidays that were arranged 8 months ago too. That's from Kit the Other. Yeah. I don't think that's unfair. Why don't all departments and doctors send reminder text messages the day before, like the blood clinic? There have been many times I've forgotten and the text message has reminded me. Well, you shouldn't forget. Write something down and stick it on the fridge. Also, it wouldn't be fair to charge old people or people with memory problems. Well, I mean, they can get a message. But then if some people were exempt, who would decide who would be charged? All right. I think this missed appointment thing is an admin issue. I guess that these are allocated appointments, not ones made by patients themselves. There's a letter sent, nothing else until no-show in 3 months. Simple. Make a call, find out if the person exists, correct address, and if the appointment suits, then send a letter and ask them to confirm again and send £10 to be refunded when they turn up. Simples, says James. Oh, I don't know. My granddad got a letter from the memory clinic. We were not told about this. He has dementia and doesn't know what day it is, let alone an appointment time. Would you expect him to get charged? And if not, then who decides who does and who doesn't pay a fine, says Cal. I used to be at a doctor's in Onken and always ran 30 minutes to an hour late. Been with Peel Medical Centre 3 years and I've never been more than 15 minutes late. They've never been more than 15 minutes late. Calling the doctors is difficult as it's often engaged for long periods. Yeah, it is. Stu, if you book a hotel on the internet booking site, don't turn up, they'll debit your card. Perhaps the Serious DNA's card details should be taken to secure appointment booking, says Selena. What a good idea. Stu, I once received a letter with a hospital appointment 6 months in advance. When the month came, I was convinced that the date was the 26th, but was surprised to get a letter saying that I'd missed the appointment on the 16th. And they'd made another appointment. If I have a dentist appointment, the dentist sends a text 2 days in advance to remind me. If the hospital texts a reminder, I'm sure that would cut down the number of missed appointments. I appreciate a reminder from the dentist who charges for missing an appointment. Okay. I had a reminder text this morning from the dentist and I've forgotten all about it, says Steve. Why had you forgotten about it? Charging people for missed appointments should have happened a long time ago, in my opinion. 3 DNAs then removed from the practice till 50 quid's paid to re-register with a doctor, says Pete. Not a bad idea. At the blood clinic, you have the choice to get a text message, so if you know you need a reminder, you can get one. If not, you don't have to. Therefore, if other departments or doctors gave patients the choice to get one, I'm sure that there would be a huge reduction in missed appointments. The message is automated, so it's no hassle or extra work for anyone. That from Helen. I think that you must be ringing the dentist at the wrong time of day. Try 2:30. Well done, Mal. Would help if the practice had a cancellation phone that went to an answer phone. Yes, it would. Don't know which doctor or dentist you use, but ours are usually engaged or don't answer. Or do answer if you wait, says Irene. Regarding private appointments, treatments, anybody who wishes can make a private consultation appointment, then choose to have the treatment on the NHS list or pay privately. However, that patient then becomes an NHS patient again about anything else, unless they choose again to go privately for other appointments, etc. That from D. That was my sort of intuitive understanding of it. Stu, Kensington doctors should have a telephone queuing system. When you ring, it tells you that your number, or I'm guessing they do have a telephone queuing system. When you ring, it tells you that you're number 12, etc. Well, that's all right. You can hang on if you know that you are eventually going to be answered. It's just when it rings and rings and rings and you don't know if anybody's there or not. When you phone, why not have a menu with options such as press 1 to book an appointment, 2 to cancel an appointment, 3 to renew prescriptions, etc. That from Pauline. Good idea. And I think we've got Andrew on, so let's try and squeeze a quick call in from him. Hello, Andrew.
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
You're talking about people taking responsibility for their own appointments. I have an appointment on a fairly regular basis at Nobles, for which, once I've seen the specialist, I have to make another booking.
Yeah.
Now, they're not able to give me the appointment there and then, but they insist on sending it out in the post.
Yes.
So there's all the admin and postage, and then because the appointments are about 6 to 9 months apart, they do send a reminder out, which then incurs more admin and postage. Now, what I'm sort of suggesting is I'm prepared to take responsibility for myself, write times and dates down, and yet the government insists on throwing all this money away on postage and admin.
Yeah.
And, I'm just a little bit of a twist on what you're talking about, but I just wondered what you thought about that.
No, I think what you say makes perfect sense. Yeah, make the appointment, the next appointment there and then while you're there. And there do seem to be a lot. And whenever I get an appointment, it's always between the hours that I've said I'm not available, between 11 o'clock in the morning and 2:15 in the afternoons. I'm not available because I've got a job to do. So unless it's life or death, please give me an appointment outside those. And every appointment that I get is always between those times. So they have to do it again. And send me another appointment letter out. So it does seem that these things could be a lot simpler if they got to it. Thank you for your call, Andrew.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is independence for the UK something that the Isle of Man should be considering for itself? The Manx Nationalist Party McVannin says the island shouldn't wait for the UK to leave the European Union to kick in before we consider a split from the UK. The fallout from the UK vote to leave the European Union means that it could now be the right time to consider independence. Is full independence a realistic aspiration for the Isle of Man? Since the UK's vote to leave the EU, should the island now be considering it as a realistic possibility? Or could it be damaging to the island in the long run to cut political ties with the UK? I've never heard such rubbish, says Dave. I think Mr. Kermo's living in cloud cuckoo land. We wouldn't have a hope. OK, well, there's one point of view. Quite a few, both here and across, have their own agenda, not always for the good of the country, but if they can find a bandwagon, they'll jump on it, says Tom. OK. Can we get the promenade done before any talk of independence, please? The state of it is embarrassing. There's more important things to consider at the moment. OK. Let's go to the lines. We've got Sylvia on. Hello, Sylvia.
Well, it annoys me, actually.
Oh.
Because the present members who are spouting on or brought this up, they want to go down to the library, the government library. Mr. Gelling, when he was...
Chief Minister?
Yeah, he was twice Chief Minister. I don't know which one it was. But he approached the English government, I believe, and asked if they had any objections to us becoming totally independent. Mm. And the answer was none at all.
Ah.
Providing we erected customs at every landing port.
Yes.
And I didn't think that was terribly difficult for them because all they want is one man there.
Yeah.
And Jersey and Guernsey, they don't, they're independent.
Yes.
They have customs there.
Yeah.
And two men standing behind a counter seeing to one to Guernsey, one to Jersey. And then the Isle of Man, a man representing the Isle of Man. A customs officer doing that. I'm not talking about the big stuff. I'm talking about the individuals.
Yes.
You know. And I didn't see there's something terribly difficult about it. But anyway, it didn't. They all said, "Oh no."
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's being done. It's wasting time. Why don't they just go and do their homework before they start with these so-called bright ideas? Not even new ideas.
Oh, no. Well, I'm sure that people have been talking about full independence for hundreds of years in the Isle of Man. And, you know, anybody...
They haven't gone as far as that.
OK, but I'm sure that most people who really care deeply about the Isle of Man quite like the idea of us being independent of the UK. You know, we always feel as though we're hanging on to the coattails of another jurisdiction.
Yes, so do I.
And being told what we can and what we can't do. Maybe the fact that we were getting more VAT than maybe we were entitled to was what put politicians off over the years.
Yes, well, why did we have VAT in the first place? We're not part of the European Union.
Sure.
Never have been, and yet we've got European passports.
But now I'm led to believe that the VAT sharing agreement has been changed so that we're actually just getting what we're entitled to, what we raise in the island. So maybe it's changed that, because whenever I've talked to politicians about this, from both sides of the argument over the years, and I've said, surely the Isle of Man could be independent, couldn't we? And they all say, well, yes, but the cost of it would be huge. It would cause all sorts of problems. So I don't know. I'm not a politician.
I don't either. It just seems silly to bring the same thing up and up and up. Maybe it's because I'm getting old and I'm hearing the same rubbish over and over again.
It could be that, yeah. Now, since you're on, Sylvia, I thought of you yesterday because somebody got in touch talking about the passport and the fact that it said in the passport that because they're an Isle of Man person, that they couldn't work in Europe. You've raised that a couple of times. Yeah. I wondered whether or not this was a quid pro quo situation because we've got a work permit system here, unlike the UK.
We haven't got one, have we? Because Mr. Bell has dissolved it.
No, it's still there. I mean, it might have been changed, but it's still there. And certainly at the time that Britain went into the EU, I wondered whether or not that was a sort of a bargaining chip that, if the Isle of Man wants to...
No, we're Protocol 3, Stu.
Yeah.
And if you go down there to the government library and get a copy of it, it's Article 6. And it says on the back of your passport, inside your passport, the holder of this document has no legal rights to work or services in the European Union.
Yeah. And I just wonder why that is, though. Any idea why that was?
We're not part of the UK and we're not part of the EU.
But why wasn't it allowed under Protocol 3, which is our sort of conduit into Europe via our masters in the UK? So why was that limitation put on Manx people rather than UK people?
Because we wouldn't join the EU, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, I don't think we could have ever joined on.
The same in Guernsey, same in Jersey, and it mentions them in the Protocol 3.
Right.
And their passports are stamped the same. In fact, I was only talking to the grandson of one of my friends in the Channel Islands, and he was hopping mad because he'd been offered a job in France.
And he couldn't take it?
No, they wouldn't let him in.
Right, okay.
And I know 3 people over here whose children have gone over there after going to university, which we pay for. And then when they've gone and got a job in one in particular in France, she's actually picked up from where she worked, taken back to her flat, and
exported.
So there, while she packed her stuff, right. And they put her on the next plane back to London, I think it was. So I mean,
so the French are fairly good with some illegal immigrants, then.
Well, maybe they are. They certainly are here, aren't they?
All right, fair dues. Thank you very much, Sylvia. Let's have a look at some more texts. They're just scaremongering. They don't know what'll happen, so why panic? Give it 5 years and see what happens. The island doesn't want to be a part of Europe, but they want the UK to be a part so that we can use them, says Gary. Well, the Manx have always been very pragmatic about these things, so maybe. Is it possible that there's a contradiction between wanting independence and wanting to be part of the EU, asks Arthur. Good point, Arthur. Stu, being independent from the UK, I thought it cost the Isle of Man £5 million a year for protection. Who would protect us then, asks Enid. If the Manx people wanted to leave, the English people living here would outvote us. It's a pointless exercise. No point in independence, says Rich. It'd only be for the point of being an independent amongst patriotic idiots. Would be like a large town in England wanting to be independent. EU will throw sour grape sanctions on England for the Brexit. I'm pretty sure that England would do the same to us, says Rich. Well, it appears that the French are being fairly agreeable at the moment about it, so who knows? But patriotic idiots, well, it's never idiotic being patriotic, I don't think, unless you go too far with it, as some people do. So, what else we got? Stu, Britain joined the EEC, not the EU, the European Economic Community, not the European Union, which it morphed into. The EU is ruled by France and Germany. who want a superstate, says Dave. Yeah, see how Scotland go first, says Alex. Stu, I don't think we're anti-immigration. Personally, I don't mind anybody coming here to work, but I don't want them coming here because it's an easy way out. These people should be patriotic and work to make their own countries a better place to live in. After all, isn't that what once made Britain great? Asks Ian. Good points, thank you. Hi Stu, I've always been of independent mind and would like to think that were I born in 1930s Germany, I would have followed my own conscience and not Hitler, says David H. The problem with being Manx to work in Europe is your national insurance number. Get an English one, no problem. Ah, right, okay. Something about, no, I think it's from Ross, not going independent will struggle without trade. It'd take far too long to organise any other deal with another country. Could be the end of the Isle of Man. OK, well, that's a point of view, certainly. Oh, yeah, Nicola Sturgeon flouncing around Europe like Mary Queen of Scots. She was told by Europe that they'd only deal with Westminster, says Dave. Let's see what Malcolm makes of this. He's waiting on the line. Hello, Malcolm.
I didn't hear, I only came in at the last minute on Mark Kermode's interview and point of view and so forth, and so I didn't hear very much about that. But I think that we should remain part of the British Isles, and I think we get a lot of benefits
from being a Crown dependency.
Yes, I think we do, and I just wonder what would happen if we were independent. Would we have to have new passports, visas, and so forth, just to go to the UK?
Well, there is a lot of that because at the moment, I mean, people say that we're overgoverned, we've got too many politicians. We would have to have a lot more, I think, if we had to have people employed as part of our government to do the external affairs things that at the moment the UK does for us.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it would let you in as defence minister, wouldn't it?
Me Piper Cherokee, yeah. Good stuff. All right, Malcolm, so you think leave things the way they are. Good stuff. Thanks for getting in touch. Robin Peel called. I don't think that we have anything to fear from independence, he says. There are other small countries who become independent from bigger territories and they're fine. We've the oldest ongoing parliament in the world. The only fear we have is that we don't know what would happen, but I think we should be independent from the UK. Stu, I thought that Moses had 2 tablets of 10 Commandments, but he dropped one which shattered, says David H. Well, it depends on which novel you read, I suppose, David.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is a ban on the display of cigarettes likely to have an impact on smoking rates? Legislation, which means tobacco products must be kept out of view in the outlets that they're sold, comes into force today. It follows the introduction of similar restrictions in jurisdictions across the water. Are the changes a sensible move, do you think? Should the restrictions be even stricter, or are they likely to have little impact on smoking rates? I wonder who is supposed to police smoking in works vehicles, because they aren't doing a very good job, says David. Are they not? Hey boy, what next? Do you cover over booze in supermarkets and adult magazines, let's say, in corner shops? Question from Frank. Hi Stu, thanks to Anita making me feel like a leper when I go to buy tobacco. I now, like a lot of others, buy my products online. The only one she's affected by this nonsense are the local traders, says Richard. Well, won't hear a word against Anita. She's just doing a job. The decision was taken by the politicians, wasn't it? Probably in consultation with public health. So, I mean, she is employed to do the job that she's doing, so it's not her fault. Stu, I think that people are mental in the first place if they want to smoke or use drugs purely for recreation, says David H. OK, well, that's a point of view, and I understand that people feel like that. But, I wouldn't criticise somebody unless I'd walked in their shoes. And as an ex-smoker, it's made me a lot more tolerant of other people who have addictions to gambling or, whatever it might be, gambling and drugs and things like that, in that I don't condone or want to do any of those things. But at least I know how addictive some of these activities are. The government are doing everything they can to stop us smoking so we can all live longer. Then they're telling us that we'll have to work longer and pay more for our pension and get a reduced pension because we're all living too long. Answer to the pension crisis is to give everyone free fags from age 16 up. Yeah, well, yes, in a way, yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. Let's go to the lines. We've got Eddie on. Hello, Eddie.
I think the world's full of idiots these days, isn't it? They're trying to tell us everything that they come along with is so contradictory and silly and so forth, isn't it? And the bit that really annoys me is I pay their wages.
Yeah. I just got a text from somebody that says the same thing. What makes me laugh is these health lot that spout off about smoking. Their wages are funded from the money the government gets from my fags, says Dave, which is, to an extent it's true.
Yeah.
But I suppose...
I think I've mentioned it loads and loads of times. The scientific evidence for all this isn't there for them lot. They keep spouting about it and all the rest of it. They've got to do this. Like you said, it's her job, right? And she's getting paid for it. But the scientific evidence is this. Could we have a level playing field in the sense of the car that everybody drives in, and every household has got one? It's not a case of having some households that smoke and some that don't.
Sure.
Every household has got a car. And the car is a proven fact to be 1,000 times more pollutive than a cigarette, smoking one, of course. There is no evidence at all of passive smoking. It will harm you.
Well, let me just stop you there, Eddie, because, I would love to agree with you on this because I can get on a soapbox about this all day. And I think that probably what you say makes some sense in terms of, car emissions and things like that. I'll tell you the thing that, no two ways, smoking is bad for your health. That is beyond any dispute. I think we'd both agree on that. But the thing that bothers me about this is cars, we're talking about the fact that cars are polluting. But the other thing that bothers me is that smoking rates must be a fraction of what they were 20 years ago. Exactly. Yet still, incidences of lung cancers are going up, as I understand it. So, the correlation isn't there between smoking, I wouldn't have thought, and cancer.
Well, it's exactly the point. The scientists will tell you that even if you listen to programs like, Professor Cox and so forth, Ian Stewart and all the rest of it, we have always had lots and lots of sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, as well as carbon dioxide. These are all natural things that happen throughout the world. And at any given time, they could be low, very high, whatsoever. The human body can absorb as many of these things as you want, right, usually, from natural sources.
Yeah.
And it will either survive it or not. The body is built that way, right? Carbon dioxide on its own is absolutely no problem whatsoever. The body has got to take that because the world can't exist without it.
Of course, yeah.
But when they come out with all these silly things, this 3,000 chemicals in that, if they're looking at it in microscopic particles of chemical elements, they might be 0.1 thousandth of one, but they love to exaggerate things, and they're not telling the truth.
Well, like I say, as much as I'd like to agree with you about it and get on my soapbox, I think that neither of us would disagree with the fact that smoking is...
I do, honestly, Stu. I'll tell you what.
I think there's a question about passive smoking in my mind.
Stu, I've just had visitors over, right?
Yeah.
I'm nearly 70 now, but every single member of my family when I was a kid smoked.
Yes.
And we were a big family. There was 8 of us, plus your aunties and uncles and mates and things like this. You could hardly see the television through the cloud at sometimes. But that was when we had one, of course. We got rich eventually.
Yeah.
But, not one of my family has died of lung cancer.
Right. Well, my father did, you see, and he was a heavy smoker, so...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the evidence now that they're dishing out to us is that if you smoked in the old days and you died of any lung-related disease, like 2 of my members of my family have, and it wasn't investigated properly, it was put down to smoking.
Right.
I've got 2 lots of my family who've died with the thing that they're talking about now, the
mesothelioma. Yeah.
And also, an uncle of mine worked as a diesel fitter all his life. He died at 51 of lung cancer.
Diesel, you see. Yeah, that was a big mistake. Yeah. All right, Eddie, good to talk to you. I don't know whether or not I would necessarily go along with Eddie's argument on much of that, but certainly the sentiment, I think, is right. With the general election just around the corner, I have an idea that it's a surefire vote win with the senior citizens. Give everybody over 60 free fags and beer for life. And that's you elected then. Text in from Susie with kisses. 2 kisses today, Susie. Careful. Stu, the last caller's deluded. I think Eddie's been told that before, probably. The fact that the heavyweight cigarette companies are bowing to plain packets and health warnings is a sentiment to how dangerous smoking is. I've never smoked, says Susie, but suffer from mild asthma. Both parents were heavy smokers, and the effect on my breathing being around smokers is quite shocking. Do what you want in life, but don't delude yourself, she says. Yeah, okay, I can understand that. Stu, nanny state's gone mad, hypocritical to boot. They tell us that smoking and drinking are bad for us and the biggest killers in the UK, but less damaging drugs are illegal. They won't ban altogether because of tax, and hiding them will only lead to intrigue. Can't wait for a pint and a smoke after work. I just need to find a working class pub to go to, says Steve. Okay. Will the legislation still come into being, banning the sale of cigarettes in packets of 10 now that Brexit has taken place? This is a bit like you can't buy petrol in half gallons because all the information is built on full gallons. It's crazy, says Howard. I don't know. I've not heard about packets of 10, and I've not heard about you could only buy petrol in half gallons. I think there's a minimum that you can dispense at the pumps, but I thought that was a mechanical thing, that the pump, wasn't set up to deliver less than that. But I don't know. It might be a safety thing. Who knows?
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who contributed to the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can share your thoughts on the Facebook page at any time. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you'd like us to discuss on the programme, why not suggest it to us? Email talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.